But I was just,
Oh, sorry, just hit the button before I forget it.
oh yeah, no, and I just hit got it,
I
and
just
I'll start recording on my end also.
I just did a podcast on the Rescuers, the Disney movie.
Oh,
Um,
because I read all of those books, man. When I was in like third grade, they had them all at the school library,
oh, weird,
and
because I say
I
in the podcast
devoured
like
like,
I was like saying on the podcast like I didn't even know it was books. I didn't
yeah, it
know
was
it was a series.
the borrowers a field, the borrowers a float, and the borrowers a loft were the four books. And yeah, I mean, I remember my family was kind of surprised that I was 8 years old and read like, four pretty decent sized novels in the course of a week. So
But the actually the really interesting thing is because we had just done North by Northwest, and actually I
Mhm.
watched it again with my family because my daughter now likes Hitchcock, so um, so
Oh,
I
cool.
watched it again. But we were like, the Rescuers has a lot of weird parallels with North by Northwest.
Oh, no way.
Starts out the
Yeah.
UN. You got the female spy mouse taking the more hapless guy kind of on a trip, right?
Hmm.
So pouring bottles of bourbon down people happens in both movies. Just yeah, we are like, there's a lot of it's moonshine in the Rescuers, but
Yeah. Now there was a British series, but I don't think I ever saw them. The film had John Goodman, right?
uh, which film?
Or
Sorry,
the borrowers.
the Rescuers.
Oh, the rescuers. You know what? I was thinking of the borrowers this whole time.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
really sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
no problem. Yeah, that's
Edit all this out.
1977. This is just the pre-chatter, and we're not talking about the Twilight Zone yet. But no, that's 1977 Disney movie, The Rescuers, which
Got it,
also
got it,
was
got it. Yeah.
based on a series of novels. So
Okay,
it's
good deal.
it sounded right for quite a
Yeah.
while. But yeah, just it was kind of interesting, like seeing a few parallels with that. And now that I've been Hitchcock dorking like pretty hard, like since my daughter likes it, I ordered the set of like 15 movies or whatever because they have Japanese subtitles, right?
Yeah.
And they got North by Northwest separately because for some reason that version doesn't have it, and it's like that's a good place to start. They
Oh,
said
that's crazy.
they both we had family fun night movie night with Psycho too, and they both like surprisingly they both like Psycho better, which I my wife doesn't like scary stuff, so I was very surprised she preferred Psycho.
That's interesting.
I mean, any given day, I'll tell you my favorite is I said on the podcast time, Vertigo, Psycho, or North by Northwest, probably. So
Yeah, and then yeah, and I know, and I'm sure it changes around. I just, like I'm still sort of enthralled with that, all that mid-century awesomeness that was North by Northwest. And although Psycho wasn't made, you know, decades before or after, it just didn't take advantage of any of that. It's black and white, very minimalistic.
it's all it was because it was done so cheap. That was
Yeah,
he used
that
his
was the.
TV crew, yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, my daughter's after seeing Psycho and North by Northwest was like, I can't believe the same guy made both those movies, and I was like, yeah, and he made them back to back.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild because I guess Vertigo, well, even Vertigo is quite different than North by Northwest. It's just in color, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but we're doing Vertigo next week, which is one of the reasons that
Good. Did Jessica get back to you about Singing in the Rain?
yeah, it sounds like she's in for that if possible. So, um, I just didn't know. Was she? She said she's in Central Time now.
She's spending more time in Chicago with her boyfriend.
Ah, okay. So, well,
Yeah,
Chicago's cool. So,
which is good.
anyway,
I missed a call today. She and I were coordinating because I sent an email to Seth MacFarlane's publicist or his assistant, Cassie, and she actually apparently she called because I got an email. Hey, Mike, just tried you. Please give me a ring when you can. And I called the number back and didn't get anything, which makes me mad. But she returned the call to Jessica and then included two other people, Lauren Montgomery and Tiffany Zarabi, because we asked if we could host the uh, STLV Orville panel. Because the
right.
people that they have host panels there don't even fucking know anything about Star Trek, let alone the Orville.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then also we talked about having Seth back on the show just for like a supplemental, just to talk about movies and music and TV and shit like that, to promote Ted, the series, which is coming out soon.
Oh, okay. I guess that's good promotion because I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Um,
coming out on Peacock.
yeah, I did send a message to because Luke and Mark haven't seen the Orville, so I did send them
Hmm.
a message like you should really watch A Happy Refrain before we do this. But
Yeah,
so I'm not sure if they will or not. Sometimes,
good point. Yeah, yeah, because we'll be talking about it. I know that.
yeah, I told them it's going to come up. So if you want to be, I mean, sometimes they go on for games for a few minutes, and I can kind of like take a brain nap. So
Right. Yeah.
they record a supplemental without me.
Without you?
Yeah, because I wouldn't have had anything to say or anything useful to say because we did Citizen Kane, which
Hmm.
the subtitle of the podcast is the Citizen Kane of podcasting, which came from Luke because people are always talking about the Citizen Kane of gaming. So
Oh,
so him
gotcha.
and Mark wanted to work out what is the Citizen Kane of games. Having
Hmm.
I still had to edit the episode, and it sounds like they stumbled on the game Dark Souls. I'm like, I don't know anything about that game, so it's fine. I wasn't in on that. I would have
Yeah.
been like, it's a Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger. Is it Chrono Trigger? Yeah, they say except like assuming it's Chrono Trigger. So I'm not that deep a gamer. So casual on my iPad now. Let me bring up my notes, and I guess we will roll on into this.
Yeah.
There we go. Then I should put up the thing first. I'm gonna give you actually today, if you don't mind, a little
Uh-huh.
more of a tome. I'm putting the opening and closing narration together.
I like that because I was really I was really impressed by the closing narration.
Yeah, it's like if we're quoting Shakespeare, it should probably be part of this.
Yep.
And that did come up. I was talking to someone last year. I think we were doing one of these, and they're like, "Why don't you ever do the closing narration?" I'm like, well, "I don't never do it. I just usually don't." So it is a little longer, and I've recently been making people read like we did It's a Good Life, and that's just like 5 minutes of reading because that's how the episode starts. So I'm getting this formatted for you.
Appreciate it. I was just answering an email real quick. Cassie said she tried me. I did not get 317-506-9686. I gave her the right number. Okay, that's good. Because I don't have like an Outlook signature for my Roddenberry stuff.
Oh.
So I typed in, I mean, I could, but I don't.
I guess I can
So,
smaller brag since you got that. That's very cool stuff. But I we have to do 2001 A Space Odyssey again for
oh, fun. Yeah.
and I
Gary Mitchell.
made sure to check several months in advance for availability, but it looks like we will get Dr. Aaron on for that one. So
Oh, lovely.
yeah, because in the past she did Interstellar and Contact with us, and we'd
Uh-huh.
already done 2001. So it's man, it's too bad we already did 2001. Since we can get her on sometimes. So it's like, oh, now we can. Great.
Are we gonna do you want me to read all of this now, or do you want to do
Oh
the
no,
end at the end?
I'm just
Okay,
getting it prepared. If you remember, I
got it.
do a little intro. I'll do my trivia, and then I'll re-screen it for you.
Perfect.
I'm always afraid it won't be there because when I have to teach Zoom lessons on work
Hmm.
at work sometimes, and what on my iPad, whatever I put on the screen, when I come back, it's gone. So,
Yeah. And I
so
had it up also, so to speak, from the Twilight Zone wiki page.
oh yeah, if you want to do it that way, that's fine too.
Oh no,
I
it's yeah.
can't just assume people are doing that. So,
Fandom. I guess John said that Roddenberry's getting close to striking a deal with fandom so that, you know, everything Star Trek is already kind of linked, but everything in the on the podcast network would then get linked also.
oh yeah, that's
So
cool.
if there's a podcast that talks about, a particular episode, but also mentions other
Mm.
episodes and things like that too, it would be that's sort of something that they take care of.
Yeah. See, it's kind of a weird part of my Trek fandom is that it's basically unknown in Japan. Like sometimes I'm like, ask me a question with students like, what's your favorite TV show? And I never know what to say because I'm like, if I say Star Trek, they're gonna just stare at me. So I'm
Super
like,
happy
oh,
fun time.
yeah. So no, I just like, oh, my favorite. I'll say my favorite show is well, I'll usually say SF because I understand that more easily than sci-fi. Like
Okay.
yesterday,
Did
I
not know
will,
that.
yeah, I will throw out. Like yesterday, someone asked, "Oh, my favorite show is Star Trek. It's a SF, because I know they don't know it." So, um, so yeah,
Cool.
it's kind of a, yeah, it's like a bubble. But then I got my, it's like I'm always having my constant convention on Zoom. So it's a
Yeah.
weird virtual world. I guess that's very Trekky and very techy.
Yeah, I wish it was more virtual, man. I'm making me go into the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm like,
No, I this year I've got a right now I'm a slacker, man. I have 2.5 hours of teaching today. That's it. It's like, yeah,
nice.
which is nice because like 2 or 3 years ago, I was like just like every moment I had a class and it was driving me crazy. So now we're slightly overstaffed, and
Hmm.
yeah, I've kind of been chilling recently, so I'll ride that as long as I can.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna leave that 5 second of silence and get rolling. Hello, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we delve into all of the episodes of The Twilight Zone and beyond. This is Matt here, coming back for more from the Mission Log, the Orville podcast. It's Mike Richards. Howdy.
Hey, Matt, thanks for being back, man. Just really enjoying doing a couple of shows. I mean, several Twilight Zones now, several other shows. So it's something I always look forward to.
Yeah, yeah, it is interesting because when I started podcasting, I just guests from everywhere and talking. I've kind of whittled it down to like mostly people I enjoy talking to. So, I mean,
Oh,
I'm
I
not
take
saying
that.
I'm not saying old guests I didn't enjoy talking to, but you click with some people better than others, right? So,
You're just saying if you haven't called in a while, it might mean something.
not necessarily that, but yeah, and also I guess I've just for the Twilight Zone, I have like been honing in more. Starting out the podcast was kind of like, okay, I want to get like kind of mystical, metaphysical, and have my like Trekkie thing in. But as we get deeper and deeper into the show, it just makes more sense to kind of like compare it with a sort of Roddenberry brush, because
Yeah.
Sterling and Roddenberry had kind of similar worldviews. So take it. It just seems like there's a lot. You get a lot more out of it, kind of taking that Trekkie approach than just like, whoa, look at all this crazy stuff happening. Let's make sense
Right.
of it. What is it telling me? That
Yeah.
sort of thing. I
Hmm.
mean, and hey, Leonard Nimoy, right? You see him here. He's in this episode. Equality of
Man,
mercy.
I never knew he was that young. And I guess Leonard Nimoy's always been a handsome man, but he was looking particularly I think handsome in his army
I found
or
it a lot
soldier
more.
getup. Yeah.
I found young Dean Stockwell a lot more disorienting, to be honest. Because we're used to seeing Nimoy 5 years later in Star Trek, but Stockwell, that's Quantum Leap and Battlestar, where I have
Oh,
my
I
Stockwell
know.
images.
Yeah. I know.
So
He was sort of first on my radar for Quantum Leap. So, and this was I think this was like Christmas week uh of
y-
the early 60s. I'll let you cover that later on.
yeah,
Um but yeah, 30 years, prior to kind of the peak of Quantum Leap.
right, right. Which I need to get back to that one. I mean, the original. There's a remake, which I don't really know the quality of. It might be great, might not. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I guess I've more entrained myself with Stockwell by watching Battlestar, because I have had like a couple rewatches of that show. So um, I guess I will go ahead and do a bit of that trivia. The original air date, you are correct. It was December 29th, 1961. The script is a Serling and certainly inspired by his time in the wartime Philippines. But the idea was credited to the have gun will travel mastermind, Sam Rolfe. Liz Kulik is back to direct, as he does quite a few episodes of The Twilight Zone, like this one. That's basically what he's known for, and good for him. Dean Stockwell, of course, was Lieutenant Cattell Enyamari, and trying to summarize his career hurts a brain. He started out as a child star, showing up in films like Anchors Away, which I was studying just yesterday because, I was looking into Gene Kelly and then looking into Fred Astaire and ran into Anchors Away. Later on, he scored genre credits as Al on Quantum Leap and Brother Cavill on Battlestar Galactica.
Yes, he did.
Yep. Albert Salmi was Sergeant Caserano. Did I say that right? I might have said it
I think
wrong.
you did.
Okay.
Caserano.
He did tons of character acting work, like in the brothers Karamazov. I've never said that word before. Karamazov. I'm gonna annoy one of my
I think
friends
it's
here.
excuse me, Karamazov is how
I
I've heard it. Now
trust
that's
you.
probably just an Americanization of, a Russian name that bears no resemblance to what it's actually supposed to sound like. But I've always heard the brothers Karamazov
Okay,
as it
I'll go with
with the
that.
inflection that way.
Um, it's a smaller profile for him, but he did show up in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and that's always worth mentioning, I think. Um, I can't tell you who I think he's just
I
like a small
One of the
role.
mutants, maybe,
Maybe one of
or I
the
guess he might have
apes.
been a gorilla.
Right.
Yeah,
Hey, look, there's Leonard Nimoy. Sergeant
yeah, there is.
Yamazaki was played by Dale Ishimoto. He'd later appear in films such as MASH and Midway. That's the film version of MASH. So he's a Korean doctor in that, apparently. But yeah, I did miss that April. That's too bad. Okay.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you said that because I noticed the teleplay by Rod Serling based off an idea by Sam Rolfe, which I thought was an interesting uh, writing credit, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There are a few, like, I mean, there's several episodes where it's like adapted by Serling, but yeah,
Right.
this one's interesting by just saying it's like from an idea. Like, I guess he mentioned him at dinner. He's like, this guy's the creator of a pretty good show, so I'll throw him a bone, maybe. It's like in memorial of when you put that in a movie, except this guy's still alive and you're just doing him a solid, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
That's thing. Sometimes it's better to show your respect to people before they are gone, I guess.
Always nice to do it pre, not posthumously. I guess that would be
It's a little too late, right? So
prehumously is probably before you're born. So probably just humously
yeah, yeah,
would be
yeah.
the best time to appreciate somebody.
Or if you want to be more cynical, it could have just had to do with the lawyers. So
True.
um you say you have the opening and closing in front of you now?
I do.
Okay. So yeah, we're gonna combine them today because you don't just like throw out a Shakespeare quote, especially when it's the title of the episode.
Right.
uh,
So I am ready when you are.
Go for it.
It's August 1940. The last grimy pages of a dirty, torn book of war. The place is the Philippine Islands. The men are what's left of a platoon of American infantry, whose dulled and tired eyes, set deep in dull and tired faces, can now look toward a miracle. That moment when the nightmare appears to be coming to an end. But they've got one more battle to fight, and in a moment, we'll observe that battle. August 1945, Philippine Islands. But in reality, it's high noon in the Twilight Zone. The
Oh,
quality of
go ahead.
keep rolling.
Yeah, let's keep rolling on that.
Okay. The quality of mercy The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. Shakespeare, the Merchant of Venice, but applicable to any moment in time, to any group of soldiery, to any nation on the face of the earth, or as in this case, to the Twilight Zone.
All right. Thank you. So I consider myself a little bit of a history buff. I've read a lot of books on World War II. My first notes are like, oh, this can't be the Philippines because it's 1945. not
We've
understanding
already
that.
gotten out of the Philippines, right?
But we haven't. There's still leftover Japanese troops there. There's still leftover American troops there, and they're still shooting at each other. Which I
Yeah.
guess we're gonna have that in even more shocking form in season 5 when George Takei shows up. But uh, yeah, but for me, I was like, oh yeah, in a war, just because the front has moved up doesn't mean horrible things aren't happening behind it, the front, you know?
Yeah, it's a good point.
And quickly moving fronts. I mean, that's the reason the on the European side, the Eastern Front was like so horrible. I mean, you start when you read about that stuff, it's like the Western Front, D-Day, all that's almost like Disneyland compared to what was going on the Eastern Front.
Well, I mean, what are the numbers? Russia lost 10 million fighting Germany on the Eastern Front in World War II.
Yeah, that's why
And
they're so grumpy at the end of the war because they're like, hey, we just, well, because Stalin's our leader, we just like put through half of our, not half, but a very large percentage of our population into like the gristmill, for this war.
yeah, there's an Oliver Stone documentary on a history documentary, and he sort of compared the numbers of what the Eastern Front looked like compared to the Western Front, and it was just staggering the difference.
Exactly. So, I guess that's where the one quote I did write from here that's not Shakespeare is kind of the thesis of the antithesis of the episode is not the thesis. It would be the opposite of that. But you kill until you're ordered to stop killing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, it's never a good proverb.
Yeah, no, it's not. And it's so, I mean, I love that character of the sergeant. Now I'll go ahead and butcher his name now. Casarano. Man, that dude is legit. He really is. He's been there, he's done that, he's seen it all. He knows what this means. It means nothing. It means we're gonna go in there, we're gonna lose some of our people to slaughter, tired, defeated, wounded, and it's just not worth it. And the kid, and it's a weird system where, a newly minted second lieutenant outranks people that have been around for, 20, 30 years um in the military. But it's more of a Hollywood trope where, they come like right out of officer training school and now they're in charge of a wartime battalion. But this is, I'm sure that kind of thing happens from time to time.
Especially in this case,
um
because they are somewhat behind the front. So you would send
mhm.
the greener lieutenant here as opposed
Yeah,
to Okinawa or something.
right. Yeah, that's a good point, but that's a really good point. So, in this situation, it's known to happen, or more likely to happen. And then you've got, the troops that have, they've been around, man. It's, as a leader, you got to listen to the people who know the job, who have been doing the job, who at least you can get some information from before making a decision. And I don't know, maybe show a little bit of vulnerability to where when the guy says, "Hey, take all that gold off your uniform, man. I know it's really cool and you're really proud of being a second lieutenant, but you got to pull those butter bars off your hat or else they're going to shoot you." And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I was going to do that. I was just about to do that."
my note here is just bad lieutenant, right?
Yeah, so your note's better than mine. My note is right here. I've got Sergeant Casarano's legit. Next bullet, Lieutenant Cattell sucks.
No, my if I would have made my note better by writing Port of Call New Orleans right after it, but that
Mhm.
wouldn't have made quite sense in this case.
So you brought it up before, and this probably has come up on other episodes of your podcast, that I did not realize that Rod Serling, but pretty much everybody in that age group, and it seemed like a lot of people in the entertainment industry did serve during World War II, but he served as a paratrooper in the Philippines, and that's probably something you've talked about before. It was news to me. I did not realize that before I did some research for this episode.
Yeah, that comes up first because it's also the Philippines in the Purple Testament, also written by Rod. So, obviously that was well, you've been through that kind of experience, and you're a writer. You have to write about it, if nothing else, is like a bit of personal therapy, probably. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
You know, he sustained lifelong injuries from being a paratrooper in the Philippines.
Oh wow.
You know, he was in a high casualty group basically, so he was
Hmm.
definitely watching people drop around him a lot. So, yeah, and that comes through in several episodes of the Twilight Zone, and I think that's pretty key to the philosophy of the Twilight Zone. That this is like people choose their own Twilight Zone when they do the most horrible things possible.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that really is a good point.
that's one of the
Because
reasons one of my questions is, do they deserve it? Because that's kind of key to that line of thinking.
oh yeah, yeah. Not to skip ahead.
Right, right. I assume most. I mean, I guess there's always a first listener, but most people probably know that's coming. So,
Yeah.
um, on the lighter side, I thought the makeup. Well, I actually put a question mark on this. That the makeup is better than in You Only Live Twice. I'm pretty sure.
Man, I tell you what, it's better than You Only Live Twice. I think it's better than Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. Like it's better than Mickey Rooney and Breakfast at Tiffany's. Like I honestly looked to see if it was a different actor.
Same here.
Oh, okay, good. I mean, I thought it was. I mean, I thought like one. I guess this is an instance where it's okay to have an American actor playing an Asian character.
And all the other
Um,
actors are Asian, at least. I mean, I don't know if
yeah,
they're Japanese, but they're at least Asian.
but it was. I mean, I thought it was particular. I mean, I was really, really looking at the facial features of Lieutenant Cattell when he was serving in the Japanese military, and I didn't see anything that took me out of it. Did you?
No, I guess it helps that Dean Stockwell has kind of beady eyes,
Yeah.
and when he is younger,
Well,
even more so.
since you live in Japan, I'll let you get away with saying that.
Well, there's other ways you could say that, right? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Although in Japan, it's weird where a lot of people will get eye surgery, especially women, because they think it's cuter to have more Western looking eyes,
Oh
which
no
is
way.
yeah. So when I first came, I actually haven't seen it so much recently, but you'd often see young women with like an eye patch on because they just had one of their eyes like plastic surgeryed, and
Okay.
I was like, what is everyone like clumsy and hitting themselves in the face or something? And then I learned about that. So um, the other shocking thing was this when I first came to Japan in 2004, and in 2004 everybody was wearing a mask, and I was like, "What? What's happening?" Just because it was like allergy season or something, right?
Oh, was it?
So
Because I know at that point, I mean, we were coming out of SARS, and
that's what
uh,
I thought. That's what I thought, but it
but
turned
that
out
wasn't it.
it was just allergy season, and
Okay.
people didn't want to huff around. I mean, yeah, it's not like everybody at that point, but yeah. So we did see that in Japan
Hmm.
prior to COVID. My phone just popped me one of those memory photos, and it was my wife at a nearby kind of like old town thing for a holiday. And it's 2019. She was wearing a mask because she had a cold at the time. So, and I'm saying as someone who absolutely hates to wear a mask. So,
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt like it was, civic responsibility and, being a responsible person. But yeah, I mean, the way my glasses fogged up and stuff like that, I mean, I'm glad to be rid of them.
I'm about to dovetail this back into the episode, by the way. So
Oh,
I
good.
found a way. I found a way to do it. So we never had like a mandate in Japan. Even today, I'm going to walk outside and 80% of people are still going to be wearing masks. Abe was still prime minister at the time, and they're like, "Don't you need to make a mandate?" It's like, well, the social norms of Japan, the social pressure of Japan will just everybody's going to do it, and they did. So even now,
So is it are people in agreement in Japan that masks help slow the spread of disease of airborne diseases?
no, they're just worried what their neighbor's going to think.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair
Like I said,
enough.
it sounded absurd when Abe said it, that but the
Yeah.
social pressure will make them conform, which is this is where I dovetail that. I feel like that's kind of a horrible thing to a certain point. Like you said, was it because they actually were trying to do health stuff? And I'm sure some people were, but it's not political like in the States. But yeah, there's some people who are like, this is pointless, and some people that probably think it's helpful, but all of them were wearing them anyway, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
it's only been this week where I've started like maybe not wearing them at work a little bit. So
Mhm.
because up to this week that was just a no go, and then I'm not sure it still might be a no go. I don't know, but we'll see. But
Interesting. I mean, that really does that. I find that fascinating.
anyway,
Um,
the whereas dovetailing
Dovetail.
is the dovetail is they make the decision seem kind of the same in 1945 with the American platoon and in 1942 with the
Right.
Japanese platoon, but because not just the military structure, but because of that social pressure, I feel like it would be more difficult in the Japanese platoon to I guess it helps he's the lieutenant, but
I think you're exactly right. The way, from what I understand, I have friends that have, worked in Japan, that have worked for Asian, overall, East Asian Airlines, um, Asiana, Korean Air, JAL, um, ANA.
ANA.
Yeah, and they say that there is that very, very strict hierarchy. Even if everybody knows the captain's wrong, they can't say anything. Now I think it's gotten better over the years because obviously that's a safety issue, but that was sort of the social pressure that they were fighting when they were working on, safety issues and trying to provide, Western style flight training uh, to Asian airlines.
Yeah, yeah, there have been some nasty air accidents in Japan. I think it's always the summer holiday, so it's August something where it was. I think it was like decades ago now, but that's still it just a plane crashed in the mountains in central Japan and killed everyone on
Mhm.
board, and that's still kind of a bugaboo for the Japanese. I don't think people are like particularly like terrified of flying or anything, but
Oh no, I
you know,
certainly wouldn't think so. But you mentioned Casarano was very willing to. He did hold his tongue at one point. He was like, "Yeah, if you want me to size you up, never mind." I could tell. I was like, "No, I want to hear it." And he just kind of went off on him. And I liked that Casarano had that empathy for the Japanese soldiers that were hiding in that cave. He was like, "Look, they're beaten, they're wounded, they're tired. They don't even know they've already lost." I mean, I think he was saying, the war is all but lost at that point. Obviously, until they found out later that the atomic bomb was dropped. But at the same time, with all that empathy, he still had a lot of. He said things like bandy-legged, called them bandy-legged buzzards and things like that, which I guess was pushing the limit of probably I
worse
don't
than you'd
know,
say on
racial.
1961 TV. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And when he said buzzards at first, I thought he said the other B word that ends in ARDS. That I'm not sure if you want. Can we say bastards on your show? I think we
Yeah,
can.
sure. I think you
Okay. Yeah. I
can.
went back because I actually thought he said bandy-legged bastards, and I was like, whoa, hey, tone it down there a little bit. But at the same time, he was saying it with empathy because he was, his point was they don't even know when they've lost, right? So they've just stop fighting. You can live, we can live, we can just kind of get on with our lives. It was really a shame
In
that
this episode, sorry, did you finish your thought?
I did.
Okay. I was gonna say they make it clear. Oh, this military's machine is made for destroying the enemy, right? Which
Right.
after the war, Japan took on a pacifist kind of SDF. It's Japan does is not supposed to attack people, right? Which
Yeah.
is slowly it's kind of in flux right now, and there's just two articles. I got Japan Today on my iPad here. One is just this is probably entertaining for American listeners. Japanese self-defense force mulls removing its ban on tattoos. So if you got a tattoo, you cannot join
Interesting.
the military in Japan, because it's associated with being in the yakuza, basically.
Okay. Gotcha.
uh one of my friends, he comes out to we go to hot springs on our day off sometimes, and
Yeah.
he's from Colorado. He's got like actually a yakuza ish like dragon on his shoulder, right? So we always go to the same two places because those are the places that will allow people with tattoos in. A lot of hot springs in Japan will not allow you in if you have a tattoo. So if you do want to live in Japan, then and you like
Hmm.
hot springs, yeah, it's probably best not to get tattoos. So I can go anywhere. I don't have tattoos. So
And you said they're going to relax that rule. They're going to remove the ban on tattoo.
yeah, but it's still there. Is my point.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
you simply couldn't have had one. The other one is probably a little more pertinent to what we're talking about today. This is today's headline posted just a few hours ago. Japan takes issue with Time magazine's headline for Prime Minister Kishida's interview. So the headline was originally Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is turning a once pacifist Japan into a military power. And Tokyo did not like that. So it has been slightly rephrased to is giving a once pacifist Japan a more assertive role on the global stage. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's Spin that basically says the same thing. I mean, where and how does, if at all, does sort of the paperwork that was signed at the end of World War II limit, and again, I don't know if at all, what the scope of the Japanese military is
For
or
several
can
years
be.
there wasn't one. That's why it's the SDF Self Defense
Right.
Force. It's
Yeah.
in the Constitution that was ratified 1950, I want to say.
Hmm.
But that's the thing. There's been a big push in politics for the past 10 years by the LDP. That's the Liberal Democratic Party, but they're pretty conservative.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the past 10 years, starting basically with Abe, they've been trying to kind of change that, and the LDP has been in charge of Japan since 1950. There was about maybe a 4 year period, about 2008 to 2012 or so, where a different party was in charge, and that's it. It's like the Republicans have been in charge since 1950, except for 2008 to 2012. Um,
Yeah.
at the same time, it is a multi-party system. We've got a communist party in Japan, that a functioning
Hmm.
communist party. You do have to make coalitions. It's a parliamentary system, right? Uh,
Right.
but and people complain about the LDP, LDP. They're too old. They can't change, but they just keep voting for them. People will complain and then just go vote for them again. It's weird.
Well, that sounds awfully familiar.
Yeah, but I guess it's another thing like, oh, my neighbors are going to vote for them, so I guess I will too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That could be it. Yeah, here I hear a lot of my parents voted that way. It's like, dude, that was like fucking 70 years ago. Like,
Yeah, it's just weird. So I don't
yeah.
get it. But yeah, Japanese politics is pretty bizarre. So
Parliamentary system, so a party takes power and they have a prime minister.
right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
They don't have the fun like battles that they do in the British Parliament. I don't know if you've ever seen clips of that where it gets
Yeah.
quite animated.
Uh-huh.
Haven't seen much of that in the Japanese diet. It's called the diet here. So um,
Really?
I have had the pleasure
I'm
of
fascinated.
I have had the pleasure of strolling by the diet building playing a ukulele. So I don't no, I don't think you could get away. Could you walk past the US Capitol playing a ukulele? Would someone stop you? I don't know.
Well, no, I mean,
I
I
think
think
it's
you're
okay.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they're starting to put like bigger and higher barricades around it, farther and farther away, at least from the White House. But I don't think it's got anything. I don't think it's got anything to do with preventing ukulele players from getting too
Yeah, yeah.
close.
I just, like yeah, I've just like gotten used to living in Japan too much. We did a podcast a few weeks ago where the police interrupted our podcast, right? That was on co-host Luke's side. And they're like, oh God, are you gonna have to go bail him out of jail? No, it's just the new beat officer checking out the neighborhood and introducing himself, which that doesn't happen in America. So kind of weird. But yeah, that's I guess I'm not even gonna call it a flaw with this episode because it's such a cool metaphor and such a cool use of like identity swapping and a little bit of time travel. I mean, all that's cool, but having been in Japan so long, I'm like, man, just the way of making a decision in both situations. There's so much subtext that's so completely different. Like it's not
Yeah.
really metaphor.
There's like the first thing I noticed was when Cattell found himself in the Japanese army. and I'm going to say it's army. I'm not sure. I'll say military maybe.
It was
Um,
yeah, could Army's fine.
okay, because I was thinking it might have been, I mean, some sort of infantry, Marine, version of the Marine Corps, or I don't know. But Japanese military, and he had that. I think it was his sergeant that was very, very much. Oh, that was brilliant the way you. That was very brave the way you ran up there single handedly to reconnaissance the American troops. That he was really, really being very, very respectful and very deferential to this guy that obviously was having a crisis to the point where he's like, maybe just a touch of malaria, but my God, you're still such a great officer.
Well, I am thinking, okay, someone kind of just like flips out on you for how long was he actually flipping out of screen time? 2 minutes?
Yeah,
He picked
yeah,
himself up pretty quickly.
I did.
I mean, I think anyone and you'd be like, oh, I'd be cooler in that situation, but you probably wouldn't
Nah,
be,
I would not. I would have kept running.
Yeah,
Well, no, I
yeah.
would have I would have run until I heard the machine guns, then I would have run straight back, and then I probably would have hid, and then I probably would have got thrown in Japanese defector jail, which is, I don't that was probably a really bad place to be in World War II.
Well, yeah, they didn't like the POWs very much.
They probably didn't like their own. Man, I just, one of the things that I think, and obviously it's got to be a human nature thing. There's just, I think there's a subset of the population, and it's not everybody, right? It's not everybody, but there's a subset of the population that just will never be able to put themselves in somebody else's shoes, will never be able to understand the complexities of a situation unless it happens to them. Unless it happens to them, they're just never going to get their eyes open to just how hard and how horrible, a situation is to be in on the other side.
And
And sometimes shows like this really demonstrate how powerful that can be.
yeah, I mean, like you and I, we just cannot conceive of a war this big where like every family is basically involved, right?
Right.
Uh, everyone of age is going off to war, and probably some people who are not of age.
Hmm.
So, let me see if I can do a screen share here. A few There we go. A few months ago, I went up to the family house, very old family house. The building's at least 100. I know it's 100 years old because of what I'm bringing up on the screen now. Um, so I found this old photo album. Are you getting an image there?
I am.
Okay. And by the way, folks, this should be on YouTube. But yeah, what you're seeing is a very young person on the deck of a battleship. You see, it looks like military aerobics, but that I'm pretty sure that is local aerobics. Like I don't think that's military. It's just like the whole country kind of went into a military mindset for
Right.
like 10 plus years, right?
Yeah.
Um and that picture of the house you see on the right, that actually is the house I found this album in. So
Oh, no way.
yeah, so it's kind of interesting because this is why his family. I mean, I don't even know if anyone knows who these people are anymore. Well, they probably do, but uh,
Yeah.
like I found a picture of one guy shoveling snow. My father-in-law was like, "Oh, that was a guy from like Hokkaido that was just like doing an internship on our farm like in
Hmm.
1955." So I got a little bit of ID on him, but yeah, I
Yeah.
just found it interesting finding the family album with people going to World War II, coming back, in military uniform at the house, and this was the from the American mindset. This is the enemy, right? Watch
Yeah.
any movie in the 40s. I mean, they're
Oh, there's
this
lines like they'll just as soon kill you as put a nickel in a slot machine or in a jukebox, not a slot
yeah,
machine. You
things
know?
like that. So it was just like in terms of this episode, it was very interesting to just find a family album that kind of has the same effect as this episode. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, why don't send those people off to die. Because from
Mhm.
our perspective, that's the enemy to shoot at. So
Yeah, and it seemed like I was almost getting a little bit of like a Christmas armistice vibe off of it, with it being a Christmas episode and with the outro that we read. Um, you know, from Shakespeare, The Merchants of Venice, but applicable to any moment in time, to any group, soldiery, and to any nation on the face of the earth. That's kind of like a really sort of global Christmassy message that I thought was probably not, it was probably pretty rad in 1961. I mean, we were just coming out of Korea, a decade before. I mean, less than 20 years from World War II. Things are starting to heat up in Vietnam. So just to sort of think, and the Cold War, obviously. So to think that, this quality of mercy should be extended to any nation on the face of the earth, I think was probably a notion that didn't sit well with everybody.
Possibly. I am looking, maybe that's the, like you said, a Christmas afterthought, because the previous week was definitely the Christmas episode. I was just looking at my list to see what that was, which is 5 characters in search of an exit. If you, I'm not sure if you remember that one, but that one is like kind of a, that's a disturbing Christmas, I guess.
Well, I'm going to go back and watch it. I was a few behind. So in other words, I skipped a few in order to watch this one to prepare for this, but I'll go back and catch those
Oh
and
yeah,
listen to the show when they come out.
yeah, even for the nuts and bolts, I have actually not watched the 2 episodes before this yet. So
Okay.
one of I've seen a lot. One of them is Once Upon a Time, which listeners will have already heard me talk about in detail. But I just started watching Buster Keaton films to prep for that one. So
Oh my gosh, yeah, he's what an amazing,
yeah,
iconic actor from
and it's a pretty easy rabbit hole to fall into because they're all on YouTube in pretty good quality.
yeah.
If you need to speed them up a little bit, it's a silent film, and then it looks like what you think silent films look like anyway. So if you need to save a little time, you could do that. I've done a little of both, to be honest. So um
I went down the dumbest movie rabbit hole last week because somebody brought up Gilligan's Island, and I was like, you know what? I haven't seen the
TV
when
movies.
they got rescued. Yeah, the
Yeah, okay.
reunion, the
Uh,
reunion trilogy, as it's called. So Rescue from Gilligan's Island was the first one. I remember watching that live. I was about 10, 12 years old, something like that. And I remember watching that. I do not remember the Castaways on Gilligan's Island, which was the next one. I don't want to give any spoilers, but that was actually a backdoor pilot, which
no
did not get
Gilligan
picked up.
spoilers.
And then the next one was the Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island. I could not find that movie anywhere. It's not on YouTube. I couldn't find it streaming anywhere. I did not find a DVD or any kind of media release for it anywhere. So I failed in my effort to complete the Gilligan's Island reunion
I was about
trilogy.
to joke was it with the Harlem Globetrotters, but I guess I probably subconsciously knew that anyway. Okay. I mean, it's like, of course that
Yeah,
happened.
of course it did.
Uh, Before I throw out my questions, you have any other big observations you want to bop out on this one?
Just the one thing that I noticed, and I didn't like, usually when we break down an episode of the Orville on Mission Log the Orville, if it's if it's a title that I feel like has some depth to it, I'll dig into it. And the name of the title or the name of the episode was Gently Falling Rain. And the explanation in the episode was when a certain character found out they had a daughter, the meaning of the daughter's name was Gently Falling Rain. I just sort of left it at that and said, oh, that's a pretty name. And I didn't dig into it. Had I dug into it, I think I would have found this quote about equality of mercy is not strained. And the meaning of strained in Shakespearean time was, metered in short supply, handed out sparingly. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. So beautiful sentiment, but I think that episode obviously was very strongly built around this empathetic quality of mercy. We just chatted about an episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds on the Mission Log Discord called A Quality of Mercy,
Yeah, that's what I'll say.
which is a season 1 episode that was fairly controversial. But just that, man, that ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, or at least understand that they've got stuff going on that I can't understand. And just give people a little bit of grace, a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, um, as you're going forward, because you don't know what other people are going through, man. You just don't.
I guess we'll hold off on like real spoilers, but having watched this, does that change your opinion of the Star Trek episode with the same name? Kind of like obviously it's a bit of I think I mean come on they were referencing this as well.
Yeah, they really must have been, and I can't remember the last time I've seen this episode. I know I've seen it before. I think it was long enough ago that I couldn't connect the dots between the Strange New Worlds episode and the Twilight Zone episode. But when you are, again, not getting too much into spoilers, but the situation there was everything was pointing at, let's have a battle. Let's have a good old fashioned good guy versus bad guy. Whoever kills the most people wins off. And there was one person that said, let's not do that and see if this will play out a different way. So I think it really, really does have a lot of the same DNA in both stories.
Yeah, I just felt like I know that episode is pretty controversial. There are a few choices that I would not have made. In general, like I get like that one pretty well, actually. You know, where it's almost a year since air date, and then watching this and being able to tie them together does make me like it a little bit more. I think. Um, Also, I just like to see shiny space stuff in color. So,
Spaceships are cool.
yeah,
Remember
exactly.
that? Remember that one spaceship? That was cool.
That was a good 10 minutes in episode Picard season 3. So spaceships are cool. Okay. Questions for this. Who in this episode travels through the Twilight Zone?
Lieutenant Cattell.
Yeah. Do you want to put anyone else in there? I feel like that's probably just him.
I feel like it's him. Maybe the Japanese sergeant who was looking at him like, oh, something's really wrong here, but I can't say anything. But no, I'm just going to go with Lieutenant Cattell,
Yeah. I mean,
aka Dean Stockwell.
yes. I mean, the sergeant is basically just like observing a bit of effects from the
Mhm.
Twilight Zone without really going in himself. Although you
Yeah,
could say, if you want to, war is the Twilight Zone, which actually,
yeah.
that was a flying term in World War II that apparently Rod Serling did not know about. He thought he was being witty when he came up with the title, but it turned out pilots would that's the oh geez, you should know this. That's the little time between something.
Probably between like dusk and
Yeah,
nighttime,
yeah,
where
that
it's
would be
difficult to see the horizon and kind of pick out things visually and stuff like that. I have never heard that term used in aviation before. Probably
check World War
because it's
II.
yeah, I believe you. I think what probably happened is that once, due to the popularity of the show, it's kind of stopped getting used maybe in that. But
That might be the
I
case.
I find that fascinating.
Also, it's just entertaining that he would have been like paratrooping out of the back of the plane, and they would might have been using the term in the front of the plane. So hey,
Yeah.
maybe he did hear it. Like again, like I was like about to say, Gilligan's Island meets the Harlem Globetrotters. Just subconsciously, I kind of remembered that, I guess.
I'm learning so much on this episode, man. This is awesome.
Well, my job is teacher. Of course, I teach English, and you know that already. But
Teaching a language you already speak.
that's right. So, does the lieutenant deserve his trip through the Twilight Zone?
What's the biggest percent? A, a billion, skillion, gazillion percent? Yes,
Yes, the Twilight
absolutely
Zone
yes.
teaches him about equality of mercy, which, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a pretty bonk on the
Now,
head episode.
having said that, I think every new lieutenant coming out of officer training school or ROTC or maybe one of the military academies, maybe not every, there are going to be folks that have good judgment, that have a quality of mercy. But at the end of the day, they still have a job to do. Now, you probably shouldn't wrap it up to the point that it's so succinct that killing Japs is my job, and you'll find I'm pretty efficient at it. Like, I think people that have the training to be put in charge generally have a little bit more big picture awareness than that. But the fact that this cat shows up and he acts the way that he does, he deserved to go into the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, yeah, he was definitely coming in too cool for school, and like in the worst way possible.
Amen.
Let's throw this one onto the tripometer as usual, 0 to 5, with 5 being very trippy, 0 not being very trippy.
Well, we got time travel. We've got transmorph
Right.
bodyography.
Sure.
Um, we've got pretty much those two things, I would say. Distance travel also, right? Like he was no longer in the Philippines during that time in the Japanese military, right? They said he was somewhere else.
I think that's correct now that you're bringing it up.
Although that cave looked incredibly the same, but he said the plot summary says he finds himself in Corregidor 3 years earlier in the war. So it sounds like a different place.
Well, they only had
Uh,
one location indoor, well, set. I mean, most of us. Did
yeah.
they have a location shot for the cave? I don't remember.
No,
Definitely set for the rest.
just the I'm not sure. I mean, it was shot on studio, I read, but yeah, so I think there was some changes in time and space, relative changes in time and space, if you will. And I'm stalling because I'm trying to come up with a number between 3 and 4. So I'll come up with 3.3.
Okay. Oh, okay. Nice, nice double number there. Yeah. So the things you just mentioned that went through my head. I guess as the guy that does this every week, I've seen a lot of time travel. War's not very trippy. I settled on 2 for the makeup.
Oh wow.
Like, I think this is a really good episode, but it is
Yeah.
kind of like in the not so trippy. It's not like several weeks ago where we got an even darker World War II episode and I gave it a -5. So for
Because it
I
was just
gave
straight up war.
well we're talking about it. No, that's Holocaust stuff. And that actually that was with John Champion, who was saying it's either a 0 or a 5. And I'm like, I played that on the silence episode, so I was like, I'll go -5,
Nice.
which I haven't offered to people. I guess, well, I tell people they can just make sound, so your sound could sound like -5. I guess that's fine. But
Yeah, the reason I went so high on it is just because of that ability to immediately pop into another life, which is something that Al becomes very familiar with down the road. Like I was
yeah,
thinking actually how much of a quantum leap episode this was. That all of a sudden he's popping into this other body, can speak the language, can relate, is having a hard time. Like that was very proto quantum leap to me.
he needed an
Um,
owl not to flip out in those first 2 minutes.
he did. So that's kind of why the trippy meter sort of was towards the upper end of the scale, because I don't think I've broken 4 on the tripometer yet.
Looking for that glass ceiling. Okay. Okay, actually, in honor of your 3.3, and for the fact that he needed an owl, but he is owl, I'm gonna bump it up to 2.2. Get a matching double number.
Nice.
I guess we'll wrap this one up then. So, what you well, I don't know how much you do or do not want to mention about what's up on Mission Log to Orville, but
We're getting ready to record. We're going to cover the comics, or I call them graphic novels, but David Goodman called them comic books. Since he wrote them, I'll defer to his judgment.
well, the podcast
So
I was
that
doing just before this, he makes comic books, also using the term comic books. So
Yeah. Oh, excellent. So yeah, there are 12 volumes, 6 stories, um, several between seasons 1 and 2, and several between seasons 2 and 3 is where they're placed. So Jessica and I are going to break those down. We're looking at having some more of the production staff on, and we're finalizing doing some crossovers with some other Star Trek and the Orville podcasters just to keep the feed alive and keep some interest. 6 members of the Orville cast will be at Star Trek Las Vegas. Oh God, I said it. Excuse me. The 57-year mission, put on by Creations Entertainment in Las Vegas this August of 2023. And we're hoping for big news there. So I'll be there, and if there's any way that I can be involved in interviewing those folks, I would love for that to come to fruition.
All right. As for this podcast, it's Time Enough Podcast. That's Time Enough Pod on Twitter. That's probably the best place to find me if you're looking for me. We do other podcasts at Patreon under the name Podcastio Podcastius. That's where we talk about the 100 best and the 100 worst movies as rated on IMDb, on Films and Filth. I talked to the aforementioned comic book guy about Disney movies on the Occult Disney podcast. I don't know if I should call him comic book guy, though. That seems kind of rude. What else do we got? There's some video game ones that don't involve me. Luke Loves Pokemon. You can guess what that's about. Hyrule Field Report. If you are hardcoring the new Zelda game, you may want to hear some people talking about some Zelda as well. And there's the game show where gamers are gaming themselves about games.
Gamey.
I know it's very gamey. So we have a very gay. It's basically like movies and games, I guess. Okay, yeah, that's what we do. I guess we're gonna roll out today. Maybe travel through some time forward at a normal speed or not. Who knows?
We're all time travelers, man. 60 minutes an hour.
Okay, that's enough silence to spot, I think. So yeah, groovy. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I definitely like that episode. So, but yeah, it's not trippy, right? Or no, you think it's trippier than I do. But it's much more interesting when we disagree on the tripometer because you have more to talk about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's always good to be able to talk that out. And I mean, you're on, this is what, episode 60, 80, something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty high number. So you've got like your tripometer is probably much better calibrated than mine is.
Well, part of the question is that different people find different things trippy, right? So
yeah, but I still think it probably depends on what you've seen, right? I mean, you've seen some trippy shit that maybe I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah. If you do want to go for one of those fives, I guess I would recommend Shadow Play.
Okay.
That's pretty high on the tripometer. Is that who's on that? That might be Jessica on that one.
Good. And then a week from tonight, we're doing Singing in the Rain.
That is correct.
And, all right.
That one.
Well, Jessica's there, so I'll just bring some popcorn and sit back.
Yeah, sure. I think she might have been on the Shadow Play episode. I'm checking my own podcatcher to double check that out. Or there we go. I go to the source. Who is my?
It's funny. We both made the "May the Fourth be with you" note, and I don't think we brought it up at all.
That's fine.
That's silly.
That's because I talked about Star Wars in my Rescuers podcast because it was also 77.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shadow Play actually is Jessica on that episode. So that was
cool.
That I think we might have both given that a 5 on the tripometer.
Oh,
because she was on for the Monsters Are Due at Maple Street, where I gave it like a 4.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And both of us liked the episode, of course, but I gave it a 4 or 4.5 on the tripometer, and she was like 0. We came to the
really that was the one with aliens, and they're like making people think that they're being invaded, and they just attack each other.
She thought it was too real. I mean, because the aliens are just the last couple of seconds, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was like, well, what if we say these people are tripping, and then she was willing to match my score, so. She was like, they are tripping, but it is not trippy. But that's why the question's there. So
yeah, and like at the end, they're like, "Look at these dumb fucks. We don't even need to attack. We'll tear each other apart." Stupid.
And then we did the Shelter, which is kind of like a more like microscopic version of that with nothing supernatural. So that was the thing. They were like, well, it's kind of like the Monsters Are Due at Maple Street, but the confrontations are like more raw. That's one that the Simpsons did a parody of, where they're trying to break into Flanders' shelter or whatever. So quite a few some parody ones. And the episode we just did, having watched the Twilight Zone movie about a year and a half ago, this is definitely better than the segment in the movie. That's the infamous Landis segment of
Mhm.
Twilight Zone the movie. So, are you familiar with that?
Uh, Twilight Zone the movie, the one with Vic
Yeah,
Morrow.
yeah,
Yeah,
where he loses his head to a helicopter with the
yeah,
two
uh-huh.
kids, and yeah, that that was the start of the Landis reputation being like not very good, which seems to be
Right.
family tradition now. So,
Mm, yeah.
but yeah, I think that movie's a little malaligned because beyond that, it's also by far the worst. That and the kick the can ones are not very good, I think. And
Right.
then but then the other two, like the It's a Good Life, it's very different than the episode, but I like both of them. I like the Joe Dante one pretty well too. And then Nightmare, I kind of like them equally. I like Crazy John Lithgow a lot, I think. In
I
that
thought he was so over the top, and that kid just annoyed the living shit out of me.
you gotta
No smoking, no smoking, no. I'm just like, oh God, just
I think you have to watch it as George Miller's follow-up to The Road Warrior.
yeah.
And then it plays really
Okay.
well. And you can think of some Fury Road in there if you want. Just remember who is directing it and like what
Yeah.
you like about the if you like the Mad Max movies, which I do.
Uh-huh.
So with that in mind, that yeah, and just that
Okay.
the episode starts ratcheted up to the point of the end of the 60s episode. Like
All
we
right.
start with John Lithgow flipping out in a bathroom, where it took
Yeah.
Shatner
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
15-20 minutes to really start flipping out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he was just, yeah, because that his backstory was coming out of the back end of some sort of a nervous breakdown or some kind of an
Yeah.
episode that he was having. And, just kind of like trying to convince everybody he was okay, but he
But
was.
that's why I like both of them equally, because yeah,
Yeah.
there's a little more intellectual punch to the old one. Although for a Twilight Zone, it's not much intellectual punch, but the movie one is just like all insanity. It's like wall to wall insanity, and I kind of
Yeah.
like that. So again, that's
Yeah.
the Road Warrior, and
And I
especially
seem to remember like it was kind of like extreme close-ups and almost not maybe not fisheye lenses, but just sort of sweating and I don't know.
yeah, you just have to be conscious that this is George Miller making the movie, and
Yeah. Uh-huh.
if you like George Miller and you're like, okay, I shouldn't watch this as a remake of a Twilight Zone episode. I should watch
Yeah.
this as a short George Miller film, and then it works
Yep.
quite well. So
Got
okay,
it. I'm uploading the file to you via Gmail right now, so you should have that if you need it.
okay, I'm gonna have to turn my screen down because since I did the first podcast and they render together, right? And then
Yeah.
last time that happened, I had my screen up, and my wife comes home from work at like 6, and there's like four people talking on the computer. It just was like it was just looping the video, and it was like The Ring or something, right?
That's funny.
So now when I tend to like make sure to put my laptop screen down a little bit now. So
Sounds good, Mel. You have a good day, sir.
I will catch you later.